Welcome back. We're going to reconvene with the Parks and Recreation Committee and Roxanne Murphy as chair.
Thank you very much. I am joined today by Michael Lilliquist, who is sitting in for Jack Weiss, and another committee member is Terry Borneman. We have two items today, and the first is Seaholm Hill Arboretum Interlocal Cooperative Agreement. We've got James King from the Parks Department. Would you walk us down this trail?
Sure. Thank you. James King, Parks and Recreation Department. So for those of you who don't know, Seaholm Hill Arboretum is owned jointly by or 3/4 of it's owned by the city and 1/4 of it's owned by the university, Western Washington University. So we have an interlocal agreement that we started entering into way back in 1974 to jointly manage the Arboretum. That authorizes the creation of a board of governors that meet regularly to make decisions and guide the management of that facility. So it's time. The interlocal agreement expires in August, so this is the next version for the next 10 years that's before you, and our request is to authorize the mayor to enter into that interlocal agreement. Both the Board of Governors and the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee have reviewed and approved it. There are a few small changes, the first of which is on the first page, or page 3 of the interlocal agreement, and the change was to add low impact in front of recreation. Where that came from was about 3 years ago, all at once there were several groups that wanted to do large-scale running races and mountain bike races within the Arboretum. The Board of Governors wrestled with this for the better part of a year, deciding in the end that that really wasn't the purpose of the Arboretum, to have that kind of volume of people going through, and particularly with mountain bikes, the potential degradation. So that's the intent of adding low impact in front of recreation. Also added was, or changed was from to ecological principles. In the previous version it said concepts, and the committee felt like principles was a stronger word than concepts, went from an idea to something a little more substantial, and this is used in the part of the interlocal that talks about managing it for environmental principles. The third change was a fairly simple one, which applies to the types of people from the university that can be appointed to the Board of Governors. And that was simply done to clarify.
Committee members, any questions? Councilmember
Yeah,
Warwick?
I'll move approval. I like the changes, the low impact. That's somebody who spends a lot of time in the Arboretum and around the Arboretum. It's an incredible place, and these changes, I think, are good changes.
Okay, great. The motion is to authorize the mayor to enter into an updated interlocal cooperative agreement for the Seaholm Hill Arboretum. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say no. Seeing none, we will bring this forward in a recommendation for our council meeting tonight. The next item is a hope to repurpose the locomotive at Bloedel Donovan Park. Mr. King.
Our sad locomotive. So, as you know, we have a locomotive in Bloedel Donovan Park. And it was built in 1918, donated to the city in 1960 by the Permanente Cement Company. And sadly, it sort of sits in a corner of the park with a chain link fence around it, rusting away. So we've taken a look at it, trying to decide what do we do with this. This isn't really the best use of what is really a neat piece of history. It used to be, as you know, many of us grew up climbing on things like this. They were recreation pieces. You could get on them and climb up in them and pretend like you were driving them. With modern liability, that's no longer a possibility. We looked at, could we fix it up and do that with it again? You have to worry about fall heights, so you could bury it halfway in the ground maybe, and then you'd have to put a rubber fall surface all the way around it. You'd have to take off all of the entanglement protrusions, anything that sticks out, so you'd have to sand the thing down perfectly smooth. You'd destroy it to try and do something like that. So we feel like it's time to try and do something better with that locomotive. The process for surplusing has several options, and one of which is a process approved by council. So that's why I'm here today. And what I would propose for a process is that we go out, we've received over the last couple of years several inquiries as to people that want to do something with it. And they vary from simply painting it up and fixing it up, maybe putting a roof over it, to completely fixing it up and get it to run again and use it. And some are local and some are a little farther afield. So we feel like the best way to move forward is to put out a request for letters of interest. Let anybody who's interested put forward interest, tell us what they'd like to do with it, so that we could evaluate that, and then if we found something that we felt was favorable to the community and a good thing for the locomotive, we'd bring that back to council for a final decision. It is important to note that we don't want it to go for scrap. We know this is got some neat history. It's too bad Gene is not here today. His dad actually drove it. So there is some significant, right here on council, history with it. And we don't want to take away from that. We want to try and enhance that history and do something a little more creative than let it rust behind a chain link fence.
Committee members? Councilmember Lillquist.
Well, I'm in support of the idea of authorizing it to be surplus, but I have a question about that. This is a piece of history I wanted to see preserved. I think we should be prepared to almost give it away. Can we declare it to be of nominal or near zero value as part of the surplusing process? Is there any financial gift of public funds concerns that we have to worry about, or do we think we can assign it a nominal value and award it based upon kind of highest and best use?
So as we've looked into what the code says, we believe that it is low enough in value that yes, we can do essentially what you're saying. We can give it away for next to nothing, but that's a council decision.
Further questions?
I would move that we authorize the Parks and Recreation Department to start the surplus process through a request for letters of interest.
Okay, we have a motion to surplus the locomotive at Bloedel Donovan Park through a request for letters of interest process. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed? Okay, sorry. Those
Finish up.
opposed,
No,
seeing none. Okay, we will bring this forward with a full recommendation tonight at our city council meeting. Councilmember Lillquist.
Yeah, just one final item. I just want to say, Director King, this weekend I ran across someone and they had strong words of praise for Mr. Harris as part of your department, and I wanted to pass it on publicly.
Thank you. He's here, and I'm sure he'll appreciate that.
End of committee.
Thank you.